Shalom and welcome to Jewish Broadcasting Service, JBS High Holiday Edition. I am Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove of Park Avenue Synagogue, and I am sitting here with two of my dearest friends and colleagues, Rabbi Angela Buchdahl of Central Synagogue and Rabbi Chaim Steinmetz of Kehilat Jeshurun, KJ, dear friends, leaders of the Jewish community, and we're all getting ready for the high holidays. So we're about to be surrounded. This is like the locker room talk of like, we're about to go out, hit the field, see our communities. We're getting ready for the high holidays, the Yamim Noraim, the time of the year that we're aware, sometimes painfully aware, of the gap between who we are and who we aspire to be. And so we enter into this period of the year of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days of repentance, into Yom Kippur as a means to do a spiritual audit, to examine our souls, an audit of the soul, and to really identify those things that we would like to correct, change, and have a course correction into the year ahead. And that's what we're here to talk about for ourselves, for our communities, and perhaps we'll open up the lens of vision to the Jewish people and humanity as a whole. But before we dive into the tough topics or what our communities might hear from us, let's start with the personal. We spend so much time preparing within our own communities for these holidays. People come out like we've never seen them before. But we're also human beings. We're also Jews. We also have memories of holidays past. This is a meaningful time of year for each of us. So, Angela, why don't we begin with you? When you think about this holiday season for yourself, are you able to create that space? Are there memories that you access? Or is it just all about serving the community?
So I would name two things. One, when I first thought about wanting to be a rabbi, it started with my being on an Israel trip with a group of rabbis and doing a lot of study. And I had this like fantasy that what rabbis got to do all day long is study texts and think about big ideas and the meaning and purpose of life, and then to teach. And that's generally, I don't know about your schedules, that's generally not what my life looks like most of the time as a rabbi. But I will say that one of the things I love about preparing for the holidays and for sermons for the holidays is this is the one kind of period of my rabbinate, usually in some of the slightly slower months of the summer, where I can think about an idea, a big idea that I want to think about and for the holidays, and look up texts and read books and really dig into it in a way that I thought like this was what the life of a rabbi was. So I would say that while the writing process is a labor and it's difficult, the preparatory process to me is actually where I get to live out kind of the romantic ideal of a rabbinic life. And I really love that piece of it. But where the holiday is made for me is, not surprisingly, around a family meal. Now, I don't get to do that Erev Rosh Hashanah. I'm leading double services. And I don't really get to do it, the day of. But the second evening, before second day Rosh Hashanah, a second Rosh Hashanah evening meal, when actually the pressure valve has been released, and I'm so grateful that I have another family that we've shared this with for now more than 25 years. We go there and it's a beautiful gathering and the table is always set beautifully, and for me that is when I get to finally take a breath and release and get the holiday.
Just be a Jew.
And just be a Jew.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting that for me, I realized this very early in my rabbinate. I actually disliked being a rabbi on the high holidays because it was such a contrast to what it was like when I was a yeshiva student. You know, as a yeshiva student, you're sitting in services, you're singing along with everyone. You actually have a little pile of books right next to you because if the services go slow, you can pull out a book and start reading, which you can never do as a rabbi because you're always watching.
Not
what
if you
page
want to
are we
keep your
on?
job.
Right.
Where's everyone going? You can't be reading a thing. And also like the nerves, certainly when I was younger, earlier on in my rabbinate. So I remember telling my wife, I don't want any guests on either night of Rosh Hashanah. Because I wanted to move through the meal quickly, which is such a tragedy. But I wanted to move through the meal quickly so I could sit down and review my notes for the sermon the next day. So it was kind of like very jarring for me to sort of have to give up what I used to enjoy in Rosh Hashanah and then be in work mode and not be able to enjoy the services because you were thinking. Now, thank God that I'm sort of a little bit further on in my career. I'm a little bit less nervous. I place actually a little bit less value on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I used to think like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that's it. I mean, thank God actually for YouTube and Instagram and every other way, because you can reach your congregants every other day of the year as well. Right. But like for me, I actually always felt a real loss on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur of not being able to be that person who sits in the pews and just appreciates and savors the prayers.
Right, I remember an Orthodox rabbi who will remain nameless, who I asked about his nerves on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, a Manhattan rabbi, and he said he's not worried about that because all the young people sort of migrated to the suburbs to see their families. He said he was worried about Shabbos Breshit, about what he was going to preach on that day, because that's when the crowds come back. And so there's sort of this ebb and flow of where. But I think in my community, definitely, you know, the people come out. People often I haven't seen for a year. That's not guilt. That's just sort of, you know, the cadence of American Jewish life. And it's always good to see them. But the stakes are high. The planning, the preparation. We have rotations of going from this service to that service. I mean, the algorithm. You need like to be a physicist to understand.
But do you have the time cards? We have time cards.
No, we like where I need to be, and you got to show up there, and so never mind if there's like a pitch for UJA or something like that. It's all very calibrated. But so for me, I'm with Angela. So I go into I burrow in, and I'll be reading, writing, having conversations with colleagues. What do we talk about? What do we not talk about? What's a messaging? So for me, that's my spiritual preparation for the holidays, and then the curtain comes up, and it's the holidays, and you can't really have those reflective moments on the bima at that time. Though I have moments that I'm truly moved in the holidays on the bima, because there's something about having the community there with you, and you'll hear Hineni, you'll hear Unatana Tokef, you'll be in a Yisker service, and I know that this person lost a lot. I mean, there are profoundly. I've cried on more than one occasion on the bima on the high holidays, especially at the Ne'ilah moment and otherwise. But and then family, right? I mean, we also have these crazy jobs that require us to be here. You know, we don't ever go home wherever we grew up,
right.
For the holidays. Our siblings
they travel to us.
They travel to us. And so and now kids, college age or beyond, are they coming home? Are they not coming home? So you steal that moment when you can to sit around a holiday table, and it means just as much, I think, to us as it does to anyone.
Yes. I think the real magic, though, it's what you're naming, you're both talking about, which is that we can get so in our heads as we're leading, but there are these moments, and for me, it is almost always connected to music and hearing either one of my cantors sing or the whole congregation singing something, and I am transported and taken out of my own, mental conversation and into a place of deep prayer, connection, community, and hope. So, that's what we hope we can kind of finally get to. Yeah.
All right, it's 5786. The world is a complicated place. Have you two started writing your sermons? Have you thought about Chaim? What's the message? Usually you email me.
Thank you so much for reminding me. I'm going to have to go home today and get working on that. No, I've been thinking about it.
I'm not asking for a spoiler alert. I don't know when, but what are the messages that people are thinking about?
I'm happy to give a bit of a spoiler alert. When I was in Israel, I picked up Elliot Cosgrove, who's one of the hostages. I picked up his book. He's got a really interesting story because he was there for well over a year. He was much older than the other hostages. He was from Be'eri. Hamas murdered his wife and his children, which he did not know throughout his captivity. And the book is filled with moments. And the reason why I chose this book, and it's coming out in English on October 7th actually, is because I was thinking about his life and his ability to sort of shift and to be able to survive. And he talks himself about being a survivor. And I think it's a skill set that Jews of one generation had that Jews of this generation don't have. In other words, it's a unique skill set. And I'm not saying that, we don't have that. In other words, we're just not tested all that much. And the question really is are we prepared? Are we ready? And, I'm looking at my own children. Are they ready? Like if there is a test in their lifetime, will they be ready? I mean, obviously, Eli Sharabi, that's an extreme situation where he's taken captive. But his story is so inspiring that he was able to find the inner resilience, the strength, the spirituality. One of the things about the book that drew me to it was that he was a secular person, but in the tunnels he started to recite the Shema and asked whichever one of the hostages that were with him that knew the prayers to say the prayers.
Wow.
Because he felt that is what gives him that strength and that resilience to keep going.
Wow.
That will be powerful. And I think hopefully none of us are in that extreme a situation, but I think people feel distressed. They're in dark places and narrow places, and I think that that example is very, very powerful. I usually give a sermon on each of the 2 major holidays, and for the first, I'm really thinking about what I would call like the war on empathy that has been waged. It's kind of a conversation that might be epitomized by Elon Musk sort of saying that the greatest weakness of Western civilization is empathy. But that's just the most recent iteration of a battle that's been waging for actually many years, and much of it championed actually by Christian theologians and pastors, so with religious language about a sin of empathy. And I think that this is something that the Jewish community, we have always grown up with the deep understanding that we do not oppress a stranger because we know the heart of a stranger, and so this
I think
is.
There's a book about that coming out. Maybe we'll
There
get
we
to
go.
it. Okay.
The heart of the stranger.
Yeah.
I didn't make up that title. I did obviously borrow that from our good book. But I would say that the idea that the command to actually step into another's shoes is so part of our actual origin story as a people. And it's interesting when you think about the story we are all instructed to read on Rosh Hashanah morning, which is actually a shocking display of lack of empathy for Hagar and Ishmael, who are sent out into the desert. So there is, I think that there is a lot our tradition has to say about what this means to find empathy, especially for the people we think of as the ger, like Hagar, the stranger, and how hard that is sometimes for us. And so this is centuries in the making that we've had to actually give ourselves a little bit of reminders of this and the world we want to build. And I think for Yom Kippur, it's kind of an opposite take of, I want to talk about tochacha, which is the Jewish value of rebuke. And we often think of rebuke as something that you're giving someone a reprimand, a reproof. And in English, that word comes from the word to push away like a brush or a thicket. So it's actually literally like this. Imagine rebuke as this kind of emotion. But in Hebrew, tochacha comes from the word that means to give evidence or a proof. And so in some ways, tochacha is really about holding up a mirror to someone. And if you love them, it's not about saying you're wrong or bad. It's saying this is what I'm seeing. Is this who you want to be? And it's actually it's a form of intimacy and deep love. So we have, as a society, gotten very bad about knowing how to give tochacha in a good way, and we're not very good at receiving it either. So this is an invitation for us to explore, and there's a lot. There are chapters and chapters on how to do this well.
I mean, we live
but
in
it's
such
complicated.
Those are
shame
right.
huge
culture
topics.
and-
Oh my goodness.
right?
Yes.
How do you give that rebuke? How do you engage in the work of Yom Kippur in this season and emerge with your relationship strengthened, not torn apart?
Not weakened and torn apart. Exactly.
Yeah, it's. I'd like to go to your shuls.
Yeah, no,
I think I'd lose
these
my
are
job.
great topics.
But these are great. Look,
What about you, Elliot?
I just changed some of my topics. There's a rabbinic aphorism, Hagonev min haganav patur, that the person who steals from the thief is exempt from punishment. So I might steal your ideas. But I have a gimmick that I use, and that it's not a gimmick, but I go for anniversaries often. I might speak about the anniversary of the Zionist Congress, or this year is 100 years since the founding of Hebrew University, 1925, which is just this
by a Reform
extraordinary by a Reform rabbi, an extraordinary moment where the Jewish people all came together. Rav Kook gave the inaugural address, but so did, staunch secularists. So did, right? They all came together. Balfour, and this moment in time and there were these letters from universities all around the world celebrating the establishment. I'm like, what a world it is that. It's also 60 years since Koufax decided not to pitch on Yom Kippur. It's also...
how do you find these anniversaries?
You can Google this. 50 years since Jaws. It's also... but the big anniversary this year that I think I'm sort of going all in on is 250 of the country. I think, because you can't give the 250 sermon next Rosh Hashanah.
That's right.
If you're going to give it, you got to do it this year. And so I think using that as the way to talk about those values of our country that are in need of affirming and defending, and through the lens of our founding fathers. With the Declaration and the self-evident truths, which may or may not be so self-evident these days. Because whether or not you want to hear what Cosgrove has to say, it's going to be interesting to hear what Jefferson would think of this moment. And of course it ties into Rosh Hashanah, the famous calendaring, that it's not that the world was created on Rosh Hashanah, but it's humanity, right? The world was created 6 days before. Rosh Hashanah, we're celebrating the fact that we're all created in God's image. And so there's sort of the Jewish American connection is very much there. And so so that's where my head is right now.
I think that's very timely. It's not a gimmick. It's a great way to ground your thinking in like the moment that we're in, and being reflective. I think that's very powerful. I will look forward to reading both of your sermons and hearing them as I do every year after I get through the season.
So it's interesting as we think about the tensions of the Jewish people. I think the last time the three of us were all together was at a community event.
That's right.
Right, and it wasn't that we were honored individually by the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council, which is sort of the umbrella organization of the New York Jewish community. And it was, first of all, it was such a good evening, and it was such an honor to be honored as the Three Musketeers, the three of us. But I gotta, Angela, I'll ask you, why do you think that was interesting? Like, why of all, we're not writing the big checks, we're not like why do you think the fact of an Orthodox, conservative, Reform rabbi to be why is that noteworthy?
Yeah. We weren't founding Hebrew University, right? I love that story that was a communal endeavor across all kinds of Jews. I think that unfortunately, for as long as there has been Judaism, there have been sects of Judaism, and often they haven't gotten along. I mean, we can go all the way back to temple times, but really throughout Jewish history, you've seen that. And I think that people are craving a sense of a reminder that we are one people, that there are shared values even amidst our differences. I mean, I sort of joked at the event that, we were just being awarded this honor just for being friends. But actually, that's not a small thing. It's not that we would all agree on how we would all practice our Judaism or how we lead prayer services together, and yet we can transcend anything that might be different about how we might approach some of that and recognize that we are much stronger together. And there's, of course, such genuine admiration and respect and love that we share. And I think what has been very deeply meaningful to me is it's extended beyond just individual relationships to us bringing our communities together for important moments. Now, many years into sharing a Tekes Ma'avar, a celebration of Israel's Memorial Day going into Independence Day, and opportunities for us to actually bring New York City's Jews together. And so I think that the community really wants to see that, to see Ahavat Yisrael, the love of the Jewish people, be a high value that could supersede differences that we can still feel. And and we don't have to cover those up, but we can do that from a place of love and care. So,
yeah. I mean, I would just say that the problem is that polarization has become the norm.
Yeah.
And it's become the norm for a couple of reasons. They talk about social media creating bubbles, and that everybody kind of sits off in their own bubble, which has happened not just to the Jewish community, but to the United States, which is why we're so polarized. Another thing I mentioned, certainly in terms of the United States, is that we're so far away from the last crisis in American history that we forget how important it is for us to have community.
Yeah.
Like everyone thinks they can go it alone, and you can't go it alone. And so like this polarization is one element that makes it normalized. The other thing, which I think is actually sort of very sad about our communities, is that you go to a Reform synagogue, a conservative synagogue, an Orthodox synagogue. There are Orthodox Jews who are terribly uncomfortable in Reform settings because they've never seen it, experienced it, don't know anyone like that, or if they do, they only know them professionally. Mm-hmm. And the same is true of Reform or conservative Jews, that they're in an Orthodox environment, they become very anxious. And they're like, okay, what's going to happen to me? Is someone going to yell at me? Is something going to go wrong? And I think that there's also sort of the tragedy of that we've sort of drifted so far apart that our people don't know each other.
Right.
And if we knew each other better, if we came together more often, then actually what we do would be ordinary. But right now it's not ordinary.
I have to say, I'll embarrass you. Chaim, you've spoiled us here by modeling this Ahavat Yisrael. I had the occasion to be in dialogue with another Orthodox rabbi. You're still my guy, don't worry. But I never realized until that moment what a courageous act it was for that individual to be in dialogue with me, because I take it for granted when we're in that we work together in the community, we text each other all the time. It's not interesting, but it is. So, but this idea of knowing the other, and I also think, Angela, to what you were saying, every so often a member of my community is honored by UJA, JCRC, ADL, what have you, and they have to give a speech. And sometimes I get that phone call, what should I say? And I always say to them, the honor is not about you or the money that they're raising on your name. That it's someone who is younger in their professional career trajectory, who is sitting there, who is taken to that dinner, who's seeing someone who's achieved great success in their professional endeavors, and they're saying, this woman was just honored by UJA. Maybe 10 years from now, that'll be me. And I said, what you're doing is you're planting seeds for others. And so when I look back on that evening together, I hope that there was a young Orthodox, Reform, conservative rabbi there, members of our communities who were like, they can do it. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe we'll do it. So I hope we planted seeds that evening, the fruits of which will come.
It's very Jewish of you, Rabbi. I do
I'm feeling very Jewish. We're on Jewish Broadcasting Service. All right, so the unscripted question, we're going to embarrass you. Chaim and I are going to team up here. You have a book coming out.
Oh,
so what day does it come out?
Wait, let's start with the name.
Yeah,
Yes.
what's it called?
Okay, October 21st, I'm
Write it down.
publishing Heart of
Amazon.
a Stranger.
But people can pre-order now.
Wait, we covered the name. What's the name?
Thanks,
What's the name?
guys. It's called The Heart of a Stranger. I will just share in the privacy of our little JBS community that the working title for a long time was Soul of a Stranger, which is a translation of Nefesh Hager, which is of course from the Torah because this was not an original title, and Soul of a Stranger, which is this sense of really that we as Jews truly know what it is to be the stranger, and that is our origin story from Abraham and Sarah, that when they are first called to begin Judaism, they can't do that from the comfort of their home. They have to actually leave their home, their father's house, their family, everything they know behind. And when they cross over in Hebrew, Ya'avor, that is where the word Ivri comes from, to cross over. So literally, to be a Hebrew is to be a boundary crosser, to know what it is to have the heart of a stranger, the soul of a stranger, Nefesh Hager. The interesting thing I will just share is that my publisher was like, Soul of a Stranger, that sounds very religious. Maybe we should make it Heart of a Stranger. I was like, you do understand that this is a memoir of a rabbi, right? Well, they won out. It's Heart of a Stranger, which is lovely. I'm very happy. The subtitle is The Unlikely Story, an Unlikely Rabbi's Story of Faith, Identity, and Belonging. I think that part of it is a memoir, but every chapter has a accompanying Devar Torah, a little mini sermon with one Jewish concept that I want to teach that is connected to the narrative in some thematic way. Like almost the way you think about having a Torah portion, which is narrative, and then having like a Haftarah, which is like a teaching that is connected somehow, sometimes very obviously, sometimes takes a little more creativity. So there are 31 chapters, 31 Divrei Torah, 31 little mini sermons, and the overall message that I want to give, besides sort of this spiritual imperative that we all have to pick up and be a boundary crosser when we're called to do so, to be willing to live with that discomfort of feeling like that, but also to recognize that having the heart of a stranger, while it doesn't always feel comfortable when you're in it, it has been the secret to Jewish, I think, empathy, resilience, grit, creativity, compassion. I think it actually has been the source of our Jewish strength. And so it doesn't feel good to be the stranger sometimes, and we all want belonging, and we have to find that, and we have to find home. And I'm grateful that I've found that belonging in the Jewish community. But I also never forget what it feels like to have felt like the kid that didn't fit in, the kid with the non-Jewish mother, the immigrant to this country, the Korean Asian face. So it is a story of my kind of unlikely story to becoming a rabbi, but also I think it's a call for empathy. That's the larger message. So that's a story that I hope to share both with Jews, of course, who I hope will maybe find their story within it, but also I hope with the non-Jewish community, because I think this is the wisdom of our beautiful tradition that is actually accessible for all people.
Yeah, well, you said that magic word again, empathy.
Yeah.
Which is...
I mean, it is in some ways the drumbeat of my rabbinate.
Right. I mean, but that's a very powerful
But I think the drumbeat
thought.
of
In other
our
words,
tradition.
Like, you're talking about people who are disqualifying empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really Nietzsche does that. Like Nietzsche says, the slave morality of the Jews is what messes civilization up. And we've always felt that actually it's empathy. And you're right, it's like, one of the great rabbis, the Chafetz Chaim, said that there's nothing as whole as a broken heart.
Yeah.
It's a really fascinating paradox, but being a stranger actually allows you to belong in a more profound way, in a more intentional way. And empathy, even though empathy is a weakness in many ways, because it opens you up to those who will take advantage of you. Empathy is such an incredible strength. It allows you experientially to connect to others, but allows you, I mean, look, from a religious perspective, to do God's work, and it allows people to cooperate and come together, which makes everyone stronger.
I'm going to put that in my sermon. Thank you, Chaim. Beautiful. Yeah.
And you're right, it does. Now we're all in Angela's workshop for sermon writing, but it does tie right in, right? The High Holiday Machzor is all about empathy, and right. It's always struck me as curious that on the first day of Rosh Hashanah we don't read about the creation of the world. We don't read about Abraham's initial call to go forth, right? We hear about this really inner family tension between Abraham being told to exile Hagar at the behest of his wife Sarah. And I think, and all the more so, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we read about the Akedah, the commandment to sacrifice your son. Now, so where's Abraham's empathy there, that he has to make the choice between obedience to God's command or to his affection for his son? And I think those narratives really speak very strongly to me this year. The idea of being stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
And I think that we all feel it. We might put our thumbs on the scale at different places, right? Some of us might be more circle the wagons, right? Now's the time to be insular, to put Jewish concerns before anyone else's. And I know that there are some people in not just the community, in my community, who are adamant that it's the concern for the other which takes precedence over, the more parochial concerns. But it seems that the Torah readings and not even getting into the Haftorah readings of Hannah and her husband, and they all are sort of circling on this question of prioritizing concern for ourselves versus empathy for the other.
Yeah.
So, are there?
I'd like to think it's not an either or.
No, there are folk who do.
Yep.
There are folk who do, but I think it's what makes us Jews.
No, I mean Hillel said it. If I'm not for myself, who will be, and if I'm not for others, who am I? I mean, it's really. It's a very Jewish paradox. I love thinking of Judaism very often forcing us to think of opposing values and try to sort of integrate both of them into our lives despite the inherent tension between them. Right. And it's a very, very powerful way of looking at things. I mean, this is Rabbi Soloveitchik, this was very much his perspective, and it is a very powerful way of looking at things. Right. And like recognizing that there's more than one way. Not everything is simple. Right. And it's in the complexity that life actually becomes richer.
Absolutely. Yeah. We won't get easy answers.
Yeah. Chaim,
you won't get them from us this year either, just in case you're wondering.
Right.
Chaim, is there a text of either one of the Torah readings, Haftorah readings, one of the tefillot, one of the prayers that sort of speaks to you this year, maybe in a way that...
Look, the last 2 years, and I'm actually going to give a lecture on this, the last 2 years, Unatana Tokef, which is part of the Ashkenazic liturgy. Sephardic Jews don't have this liturgy. It's interesting, one year we brought in the rabbi who focuses on our Sephardic minyan, and we brought him into synagogue to introduce that. And for Ashkenazic Jews, Unatana Tokef, which is a prayer that was written in the Middle Ages about who will live and who will die, and this is the day of judgment. We don't know who will live. And he came in, and this was his piece, and he was like, wait, I don't know what this is. Like, what is his prayer? I said, this is the most important prayer that we say. And he's like, well, I've never heard of it. But Unatana Tokef, it speaks to me because it's really about judgment. It's about whether, we're going to make it. It's really a reflection on human mortality. And human mortality, obviously it affects the way we live our lives, Ernst Becker with the denial of death. Is that like sort of this, that the recognition that perhaps the thing that shapes our personality most is the recognition that we're going to die. But I kind of, this year, I have a little bit of a different twist on Unetana Tokef. Like the last 2 years, just reflecting on everything in our community and everything that's happened in Israel since October 7th, it's really a way of turning to God and saying, we are so vulnerable. You can take our life away at any moment. And you need to have compassion on us because you can't expect that much from mortals. Like being that vulnerable, being that fragile, being that capable of just going in the wrong direction. I think that's actually a call to God to be compassionate. And thinking about, all of the trauma that Israel is sort of sorting through now, looking at death and coming back and saying to ourselves, okay, now it's a time for compassion, to recognize that we've all stood in the book of death for a little bit of time, and that now God needs to have compassion on us and recognize that life is not an easy thing for humans, and that we're always worried about dying, and please have some compassion and give us the gift of life.
What's up? Karachem av al banim, as a parent has compassion on children. I'm thinking of Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. Didn't he call God to account? Right, a Din Torah, and sort of God. It's not that my mind being chosen, but sometimes could you choose someone else? I mean,
it's the fiddler on the roof line also.
Right, yeah. It's the same idea that we've had a tough go of it, and a little bit of, as the Otis Redding said, a little bit of tenderness.
So what's speaking to you? What liturgy?
Oh, the Torah readings and the Haftorah readings.
Oh, yeah, you were
I
saying
find
that.
I come back to them and I just find, but I think the fragility of life. I think for me, those themes are always there, given how delicate life is, how precarious life is. You can walk on eggshells, or you can choose life, and you can take agency, and you can treat it as a precious gift. And I think, in that sense, was it Alan Liu who talked about Yom Kippur being a dress rehearsal for our own death, right? And so knowing that, so what are you going to do? And I think it's also a call to action, which I think is what the shofar is about. I think, right? It's so.
I mean, I think that, talk about holding paradoxes. You've got the Unetana Tokef, in which God is awesome and the judge and can be punishing, and in some ways is sort of almost a fearful vision. And I'm holding the liturgy that we repeat multiple times through the holidays, Adonai, Adonai, the 13 attributes of God. God, you are merciful and compassionate and slow to anger and forgiving the sins. And I think that that is the other kind of more tender vision of God that we offer, that we can, there are many, many ways of seeing God over this holiday. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. So there are many ways of imagining God, but I find that to be particularly important and tender. And it's funny that since I'm thinking a lot about empathy, there's not really a modern Hebrew word for empathy. It's empatia. That's pretty clearly a borrowed term, right? And yet we have all these words that are synonyms. Rachamim, Chanun, Chesed, of course, and I think when you think about the fact that those lines in the Torah originally came from a moment of our greatest betrayal of God, of building the golden calf, and yet after all of that, God, when Moses brings down the second set, God says, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet. I am, all of these attributes of even after the very worst of it, because we are vulnerable, we have made mistakes, we miss the mark over and over again. And by the way, other people too. But God is exceptionally forgiving. And I think that reminder is the softness that comes that we have to hold at the same time as the Unetana Tokef of the God of judgment.
So interesting how so much comes back to that scene of the golden calf. Right, it was really the darkest moment of our, we had the spies, we had a few other things, but of our desert sojourn. I've come back to that image of Moses standing in the breach when I think about the task of rabbinic leadership today. That there was a moment in time, and this sort of references back the toxicity and those who are on the extremes, one side or the other. But I find myself oftentimes feeling like you got, God on this side ready to exact judgment. You got another side here, and we as rabbis just got to say, God, let's keep it together. And Abraham, of course, had to do that with Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Just to sort of stand there. One of my teachers, Yochanan Muffs of blessed memory, wrote a whole essay about standing in the breach, right? This idea that a prophet's not someone who can tell the future or, causes people to repent, but he traces it through the biblical narratives, and he talks about leadership as being able to keep two opposing sides from tearing each other apart. And
we are all having opportunities to practice our leadership right now.
That's I have to tell you, that's the line you have to walk when we're doing our sermons on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's finding a way to speak to people without everybody sort of projecting on us their own interests or their own worries, and trying to sort of move us in one direction or another. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think most of our congregations are diverse and have diverse points of view, and I think we're always kind of standing in the middle position, sort of trying to shepherd everyone together so that we all walk and march together rather than tear each other apart.
Yeah, amen, amen. Yeah, I heard a lovely drasha, word of Torah, from one of our colleagues, Stephen Exler, the other day, who he's at the Beit up in Riverdale, and he was focusing on one of the prayers, Ochila La'el, which has different translations, but ultimately he explained that it's about hope, and it's the idea of tomorrow being better than today. And I think that this is a moment of time that objectively will be remembered as a very dark time of our people's history. We have much darker times. There's a whole lot to be grateful for, but we're going through it. And I think that, if it was only COVID, Dayenu, that would have been enough. And then we emerged from that October 7th. So it's a lot. Angela, are there things that give you strength, things that give you hope, things that help you think about tomorrow?
I mean, I think there's been a lot of conversation about what has been termed the surge, and I think, which is just a surge of engagement in Jewish life, investment in Jewish institutions, in Jewish learning, conversion to Judaism. And I think for some, this has been a wake-up call that, wow, Judaism actually really matters to me. And I think that also as people have explored more, there is something about Judaism which was built for crisis. You know that when you look at our liturgy, those liturgies came out of crisis moments. Unetana Tokef, Kol Nidre, you could look at all this liturgy in here, and almost all of it was written in a time of crisis. And so much of our texts were written in times of crisis. And so we have a wisdom tradition to draw upon that gives us guidance for these moments. And I think people have woken up to that and said, wow, I need that. I need some grounding. I need some stability. I need some ancient wisdom here, and I can draw upon something bigger than myself. And that has been really meaningful. And if I get more personal, I would say that I have found it myself. I have drawn more on my own personal prayers in the last few years. I have drawn more on texts around how we encounter difficulties and breach divides, because I really have come to feel like I can't do this by myself, and I don't always know the answers, and it's very hard. And then I'm reminded, I don't have to come up with all these answers myself. That's what it is to be in this tradition, to have some of these scenarios and human relationships that we've encountered these scenarios before. So it might not be that it gives me the exact answer, but it gives me wisdom to draw upon, and I feel grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the surge, it reminds me of a joke that Jonathan Sacks used to say, which is that the Jews came to America or England, wherever it was. If there was an exclusive neighborhood, they made sure they got into the exclusive neighborhood. He said if there was an exclusive country club, they got into the exclusive country club. He said, now I have the solution for how we get Jews to come to synagogue. Put a sign outside that says, no Jew allowed. And the synagogue will be filled with Jews in 5 minutes. And it's a funny joke, but I have to tell you, it's miraculous.
Yeah.
You have Jews who had no connection to Judaism, and then Jews are being persecuted, and they decide, no, I want to lean in and be more Jewish. There's something miraculous about it. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something remarkable about it that people say, I may not be that interested in Judaism, but boy, oh boy, if you try to take it away from me, I'm going to fight for it. And I think the challenge for us now is I like to call it the October 8th challenge, which is, okay, so now how do we hang on to those who have come to us during the surge and have said, you know what, I want to be more Jewish, I want to be more connected. How do we make sure that we really integrate them and make them feel at home and make their voices heard? But, the surge to me is actually, it's not just a moment of hope. It's almost miraculous that there's some sort of instinct in the Jewish heart that says, don't you dare take Judaism away from me. I'm going to fight for it.
Right. And that exploration, that going back to roots, has been, I think we've all felt it in our respective community. And it's not just in the pews on Friday night, it's people signing up for conversion classes, it's people, fighting tooth and nail for a place in Jewish day schools. We need more Jewish day schools and more Jewish education, or our colleague who runs a program called One Table, their numbers, there are just more people having Friday night dinners than they ever have. And I've had incredibly moving conversations of people who had put off conversion or otherwise, and now they are sitting in my office, and they now's the time to take Jewish identity seriously. And joyfully. So I think we're seeing it. I think we have to sort of catch the tail and keep it going. I think we're all in agreement that none of us would have chosen this script, had we been given our druthers. I think the other thing about it is, we didn't go to rabbinical school to be spokespeople for the government of Israel, or we could have worked for AIPAC or J Street or the embassy or otherwise, but we actually went into this, vocation to be teachers of Torah, to bring people closer to community and each other and the tradition and the text. It's and so the question is how we can walk and chew gum at the same time, because the agonies of our day are very real. They're not imagined. Israel faces threats. The hostages, as of this taping, are still in captivity, and we pray for their freedom every day. We can't take our eye off the ball of what's going on, not to mention the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis in the street every day who don't believe the decisions of their own government are in the best long-term interests of Israel. So we don't lack for agonies of the hour, and yet we have to teach Torah. We have to build community, just like Abraham, one soul at a time. I think that's our charge for the day.
That is what our people have always done.
Yeah.
Well, I feel very, very grateful that this conversation that we get to have together, that we get to share with all of you in the JBS audience. This has genuinely become one of my own ways I actually prepare for the holidays, is like to sit with two incredible Jewish leaders, to be able to actually talk openly and with some vulnerability about the things that we struggle with and how we prepare, and it really becomes a part of it has become now our annual ritual, a part of my own high holiday preparation, and it continues. If you want to ask me what makes me feel hopeful, it is actually the kind of collegiality and the kind of leadership that I feel grateful to be a part of in this community and in the wider Jewish community. And I know that there are clergy all around the country who are preparing with this same kind of intensity and heart and intention to lead us to the place we need to go, and to have a community that is actually going to show up in those pews and say, we care, we want to hold on to this tradition, thank you for leading us in Torah. So I just want to end with much gratitude to the JBS community for being a part of our communities in so many different ways, and for caring about the Jewish community and supporting the work that people are doing in so many ways, joining in the conversation and enriching Jewish life. We want to offer lots of blessings to you for a healthy, joyful, more peaceful 5786, and for you and your families. And we look forward to seeing you for the next conversation and in the new year.